Hey, good morning to you. Craig Cottle, Director of Nature Reliance School. I, like a lot of folks, are members of different outdoor groups on social media, like Facebook in particular. There's a couple of hunting groups, one of them a specific whitetail hunting group that I'm part of. And there's what I would refer to as a disturbing trend in deer hunting that I would like to help if I can. So what I'm talking about is people shooting deer and then really, unless the deer falls in sight, they don't know how to find it. So there's been the trend that I'm talking about is a dependence upon dogs. And you'll see a lot of guys go, who's got a scent dog to come help me find my deer, and that kind of stuff. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with utilizing a dog to do that, as long as it's legal in the state that you're in. But there's just other things that we can do as well. One is tracking. So I'm going to try my best to get on camera some things that I think are going to help. Okay. Now, I've purposely chosen this roadway, so Logging Road, because it has a lot of leaves on it, because I'm going to show some fundamentals of tracking. So I want to show how to go about tracking this deer, some things that need to stand out to you, as well as I'm going to show you what happens when you lose it, because anybody that knows anything about tracking knows that you're going to lose the sign. And so when you lose it, it's not if, when you lose it, if you have a procedure to go through, then you can be more systematic on how you go about reacquiring the track line and getting on it. So again, two things: how to track, some things about how to track, and then what to do when you lose it. Okay, so first off, a deer has four legs. I think that's fairly obvious. What happens when a deer walks is that the back feet, this is the front feet and this is the back feet, come up and step basically into the track of the front foot. That's what we call direct register. And so that's in a normal walking gait pattern, not trotting, not running. It's very different in trotting and running. So one of the things that happens, and you'll see this on video when guys shoot deer and they show this, and you've seen this in person if you're a deer hunter, what happens a lot of times when a deer gets shot is that it'll sink. And one of the things that's happening when it's sinking is obviously it's absorbing and taking the energy of the projectile. And the other thing they're doing is they're getting ready to launch, probably because they heard either the bow or the gun, even though it's nearly simultaneously striking them. They're hearing that, ever so slightly before. And so they hear that sound, and what happens is the deer back feet will come together almost like a piston. So normally the deer's back feet are walking like this, but as they start to bound, they'll come together like this and they'll literally bound off. And so one of the things you're looking for as you go out through there is you'll normally see, and I'll try to stay over here, you'll normally see a track, okay? So you'll see the right, left. Basically, again, the back feet are coming up and stepping into the front feet. But when the deer bounds, you'll see these two back feet come together and launch, and you'll see 2 feet, 2 feet, 2 feet. And what's interesting is that the back feet and the front feet are nearly together, okay? So because they're going up like this is the bound. And again, the front feet, there's going to be one foot that's slightly in front of the other one as they hit, but the back feet are continuing to act as a piston. Now, those of you that observe deer know that they won't run like that forever, but as you start to track, you'll see, okay, they're bounding, which means they're still incredibly alarmed, if you can pick that up in the leaf litter. When you start to see it come back to the left, right, that's when they slow down. So if you're on the track line and they slow down, that most assuredly, if you've gotten on the track line too early, is when you need to sit and wait and let that deer lay down and expire. If not, you're going to bound it again. And then, you never know. It might go onto another piece of private property, or it might go so far that you're not going to be able to find it. So is worthy of your investment of time when you shoot a deer. Obviously, I think this is well known, to basically sit and wait before you go after it. So I hope that helps, meaning specifically this bounding and being able to see that in the track line and being able to read whether the deer is bounding or whether it's actually walking, okay? Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that the front foot of a deer is larger than the back foot. And nearly all animals are like this. Basically, the part of the animal that carries the most weight is going to have the largest foot. So because the deer has the head, the front shoulders, half the body, that front foot's going to typically be larger than the back foot. And so typically that back foot comes up and sits down on top of the front foot as they're walking. But if you see that the back foot, the smaller one, starts to be in front of it, then that's where that animal has started to trot, okay? So that's where it's picking up speed and accelerating. The other thing that you'll see when it accelerates is you'll see kick up from the track itself. So in leaf litter, especially on a day like today where it rained last night, you're not going to see a lot of moisture as the leaves are overturned. But some of the things that you will be able to see in leaf litter is that leaves naturally curl, right? But leaves that are creased, that literally have a crease, they don't do that naturally. And so anytime you can find a leaf with a crease in it, something made that happen. That could be a limb falling off a tree, that could be you walking on it, that could be a deer walking on it. And so a lot of times looking through leaf litter, what I'll do is I'll look for those creases going down through, you know, leaf litter like this right here. And that might be the only indicator I get. So that is kind of, unfortunately, an unfortunate truth, in that there's just not a whole lot of sign that you can see when the baseline, which is how the environment looks most of the time, is the same even when it gets disturbed. Meaning usually when the leaves are dry and they get overturned, you'll see the moisture on the bottom of the leaves, okay? So that's a real good indicator. That, you know, if I'm tracking a deer and I've shot it, and which I don't ever have to track my deer, I shoot them, well, anyway, I don't track my deer very far, I'll put it that way. But as these deer start moving out and they turn over leaves that are dry, what'll happen is that moisture will be seen on the bottom, and so you'll be able to pretty easily pick that up as you're going through the leaf litter. Now let's talk about what happens when we lose the sign, and I'm going to turn and I'm going to walk towards you and talk about what I would do. Okay, so if I'm walking and I'm tracking, and right here I lose the sign, okay, first thing, I don't want to go any further at all right now, okay? First thing I want to do is I'm going to stop right here and I'm going to scan the ground, and I'm looking for any type of disturbance on that ground at all that I can see. So what that provides is that I'm not going out in front of me and continuing to contaminate what's out in front of me, and then it gets all a mess and you don't know what part's you and what part's the deer, okay? Usually what people tend to do is they kind of start wandering, trying to find it like this, and now you can imagine I'm out here and I've contaminated this track line, okay? So again, and I'm gonna stay right here, make sure you can hear me on camera. Let's assume that I've lost it right here. So I lose it, and I'm looking, I'm scanning, and I can't find anything. So rather than being stagnant and stopping and not being able to move forward, there's a couple different methods that you can go out from here. One of the most common methods that I've heard of is people start making concentric circles around this spot right here. Meaning I take a step out and then I make a circle, and the thought is I continue to make these circles until I run across the track line, and those circles get bigger and bigger and bigger. That's a workable and usable methodology. Just stick to it. And the reason I say that is because if I know that this is last known, the last known spot where I saw tracks or sign, and I have those concentric circles, when I come back and maybe I push out and I come back, then I know that I've made these circles right here, and it's very organized and it's very methodical, so that, hey, the contamination that I see is organized, if that makes sense. Another method, we got, pup. Another method is to, again, stop on the last known and then look out through here and look at the natural corridors that you think a deer would travel, okay? Meaning if a deer has been shot, then you'll more often than not go down here or go to cover, go to thick cover, because they're going to shelter where they feel protected. And so all deer have different areas that they like to spend most of their time in, and some of that area is going to be thicker than others, and that's where they'll like to go and get a lot of cover when they feel like they need it. Okay, so pick out 3 to 5 likely corridors of travel for that deer, and then go down them. And the way I like to go down them is you never walk directly on the track line, for the same reason I mentioned before. If the track line's right through here, I'm going to be over here, okay, looking down on it. I don't want to be walking around on top of it, because again, I don't want to contaminate it. All right, same thing when I go down these likely lines. I don't want to go out through there in such a way that I contaminate what is there. So I go out a likely line, and I get out there and I look, and if I don't see something in about 15 yards or so, then I just come back, and then I go down another likely line and I do that. If that doesn't work, then the next piece that I would add in this particular puzzle is to go to areas where there's drainage and there's a likely place to capture a track, okay? So where there might be an open area where there's a field that's been tilled up, or you've got a drainage where there's a creek, and that animal's going that direction. So you go there and you basically walk along that creek and looking for sign there. And that would be some of the best advice that I can give you as far as finding lost animals. Now, I haven't talked about blood spore at all, okay? Blood spore and blood sign is, there's 3 different ways that I like to look at it. First is arterial blood flow, venous blood flow, and blood flow that's got contaminated by organ tissue, okay? So arterial blood flow is going to be bright red, meaning that's blood that's running from the heart. The heart beats and it pushes that blood out. And so oftentimes you'll see spurts of blood. You might see it, heck, you might see it 10 feet up on a tree if you got a really solid heart shot, for example, and it's got a pathway out. You might see it sprayed out instead of just dripping. Okay, venous blood flow is darker, not as rich, because it doesn't have as much oxygen. It's going back to the heart and the lungs to get oxygen. And so that's going to be darker, going to be, from my perspective, I find it more difficult to find. And typically animals will live longer with venous blood flow issues than they will with arterial blood flow issues. And so if you've got an animal that's got arterial blood flow, they're going to be pushing a lot of blood out until it clots. Okay. Now, the next is organ tissue. So if you get a lung shot, oftentimes you'll see large bubbles, even in small bubbles, and almost a frothy appearance in the blood. And then if you hit stomach or intestinal contents, you'll often have green bile type material in the blood as well. And so it'll have that real dark, incredibly dark look to it if it's got bile in it. The thing that I find most interesting when I'm tracking deer, and again, it's rare that I have to track oh, sorry puppy, that hit you right in the head. Sorry buddy. I find it, I don't have trouble tracking my deer, but I get called a lot to help people track deer. And one of the things that I found beneficial is using your nose when you find blood. Get down on there, or get on the tree, or get on the branch, or whatever you see the blood on, and smell it. If it's got bile in it, you'll smell that bile. You know what, if you're a deer hunter, you know what that smells like. So that's a real problem. That animal's been shot in the gut, and they're going to live quite a long time before they expire, and they're going to suffer. And so that doesn't mean that you don't continue after that animal. It's just that it's very problematic, and they're probably going to make it for a considerable amount of time and suffer. So here's my recommendation to you. Take good shots. Very controversial. When I'm shooting a firearm, I take headshots. Where I shoot them, they die. If I don't hit them, I miss, okay? And it's, again, that doesn't happen, okay? That doesn't happen often, okay? So if you take a body shot and you miss, you might just miss 2 inches and get into that front the front shoulder, and then the deer's injured and is going to suffer for the rest of the winter. You shoot 2 inches back, you might get into organ tissue like the intestines or the stomach. Okay, so can't make you do it, but just consider taking that headshot. I've talked to biologists about it as it relates to CWD and blue tongue and all that stuff. It's something that you should read up on. I'll just put it that way. Talk to a biologist, read up on taking the headshots. Some people think it's unethical. I don't have a problem shooting an animal, and when I shoot it, it's dead. That's my personal opinion on it. So with that said, hope this has helped, and love to hear what your thoughts are. Come on, join in. Let's learn together.